Hip hop is the language of the streets. Everything that has happened in the African American community is in a hip hop song. Every single event is in a hip hop song. It is our voice. We are lucky as African Americans that we have First Amendment rights and we can say ouch.
If you look at social justice movements around the world, but for now, let's talk about the United States, there's always music behind them. And it seems like right now, hip hop is the dominant voice of the social justice movements we're experiencing. Today's guest is Talibah Sun. She's primarily been an educator all her life, and she's been traveling around the Americas. When I say that, I mean North America, Central America, South America. And in the classroom, she's been using hip hop to reach her students, and particularly her students of African descent. She's been able to use hip hop as a language to reach many people, even though she herself is not a musician or an artist or in the music industry. But she's been able to witness the power of this music and how it's being used currently as a movement for social justice. Welcome to the One Planet Music Podcast, where we explore the role of music in an ever-changing world. As a listener, you'll gain motivation, inspiration, and practical knowledge from fellow musicians and music professionals who are making an effort to perfect their craft while having meaningful impact. I'm your host, Daniel Rinaldi. On this episode, we make a lot of mention of specific artists and songs that we analyze, and we look at the lyrics. I really wish I could play you the songs, but unfortunately, for copyright reasons, I won't be able to. I had this internal debate, and I was studying some legal aspects and so on, just to see if I could get away with using with what is called fair use. Where basically, if you're critiquing or analyzing a piece, you can get away with it, but it's still not worth the risk. So that's just a heads up. I know every time we mention the song, you'll be like, I want to hear it. So I recommend you have, YouTube or Spotify, whatever you use to stream music handy so that you can pull up the songs that we talk about. I was only able to use old songs that we make reference to that were in the public domain or with Creative Commons. All right, I hope you enjoy the episode. Talibah, let's check in. How are you feeling right now? There's so much going on. I mean, we have the pandemic that we're facing worldwide. We have these racial justice movements that have started in the US, but have also been, sparked internationally. How are you feeling?
Well, two things, excited and exhausted. I'm actually glad that people are waking up to the social injustices, the racism, racial biases, structural racism. I'm happy about that because I've been involved in this forever, since 1968, actually. And I'm exhausted because I'm very much part of it. And I am helping people to process. I'm helping people to look at solutions outside of the political realm. I'm helping my students to have discussions. So I'm exhausted in a physical sense, but I'm also feeling very spiritually enlightened and jazzed up because I am an elder and I'm being sought after as an elder, and people know my background and how I got from point A to point Z where I am now. And so that I don't feel some of the fatalism that I'm hearing from people. I don't feel anger. I'm not angry. That's really different for me, but because of my own spiritual growth, I'm not angry, but I'm very much a part of it. So I feel good because I feel like I'm doing something, especially with the COVID-19 for me, I feel out of control. Like I can't control my life, my lifestyle, what I'm used to doing. I'm very independent. I'm used to going here and there. So that's the hard part about staying still and quiet, but it also means being reflective and meditative. And I've been very creative. So I have mixed emotions, but I am hopeful and optimistic. I hope that we will come out of this better. I don't want us to go back to normal. Normal was not good.
Why not?
Well, because we were blind. I mean, there's a lot of questions right now. And I want to say, you didn't know this? Everything is now being on social media, is being broadcast. Unfortunately, as Gil Scott Heron said, the revolution will be televised. And as Childish Gambino says in This Is America, Selly, it's a tool. So I'm kind of there. The other part of my emotions is impatient with those who haven't gotten it, who still refuse to get it. And I'm wondering what that's about, but I don't put energy there.
Well, before we dive in, since you brought up Childish Gambino, before we get into like the main topic, the body of what we want to talk about hip hop as a social justice movement, you mentioned, people see you as an elder and they've known your path going from A to Z. Let's talk a little bit about that path. So, I mean, you've been a teacher for most of your life. I mean, you were teaching at Crenshaw High School, where they shot Boys in the Hood. You taught in Compton, one of the roots, one of the homes of hip hop. Take me back to that time. Take me to these locations. What's going on?
Okay. Well, I'm from South Central LA. A lot of people tell you they're from LA when they're actually from Glendale or Burbank, because when they say LA, they're talking about the county. But I'm actually from Los Angeles. I'm from South Central LA. I went to Crenshaw High School. That's where I grew up. I would say that was a rite of passage going to Crenshaw High School. In 68, Crenshaw High School was a brand new school in South Central LA. I actually lived in Windsor Hills. I'm very middle class, but I actually was bussed into the hood. And so Crenshaw was my rite of passage. And Crenshaw was an experimental school. It was all Black, and they used a lot of the education liberation philosophies, which is based on Paulo Freire, Pedagogy of the Oppressed. And
great book.
Yeah, it's a great book. And I was breastfed on that book as a child, liberation education. And it also patterned after the free schools of the Black Panther. It was at Crenshaw High School that I became a Black Panther, because we had a Black Panther club there. And our teachers were pretty radical and liberal. And their job was to lift us up as African-American children, those who at the time would call us culturally deprived, marginalized, disenfranchised, whatever. I never heard that conversation coming from any of my teachers. Most of my teachers were African American. So it was an incubator for my quest for social justice. I leave Crenshaw High School and I go to school in Pocatello, Idaho. Idaho State University.
Wow. Big change.
Oh, that's a whole nother podcast on that one. But it also is the place of my spiritual birth. And so I have to give Pocatello that honor that I became a Baha'i in Pocatello, Idaho. After searching, I was studying Islam, and I was going real close to Islam. But at the time, it was Nation of Islam, not Islam as we know it. Right. And I couldn't get with the politicizing of it. And I couldn't adapt to white man as the devil. So that people know that. And then I have always worked in urban areas. That has been my goal. I actually have a degree, a master's degree in urban education. I have a master's degree in multicultural education. I have 2 years towards my doctorate in international transcultural studies. People know this about me, but I'm also down to earth. Most people don't know I'm an academic. My goal is to get my doctorate by the time I'm 70, which is 3 years from now. But most people don't know I'm an academic because I'm a girl from the hood. I'm like Jenny from the block. But then when they get to know me and then we get to have conversations, and for me, my goal as a teacher was to give my students a voice. This is why I use rap and hip hop in my classroom and popular music, is to give them a voice, to uplift and empower them. But first is to form an intimate, positive, intimate, trusting relationship. So my kids see me, and when I say kids, anyone under 40 is a kid to me. I teach university, but they're still kids to me. They trust me and they can come to me. They call me mama te, mama, which is a sign of respect. In Nicaragua, they would kiss my hand. But I'm also not one to lecture at them and say, baby, you need to do this and don't do that. I listen. Right. And then I let them inform our conversation. So I think that's why people come to me, because they say, I'm cool. Oh, she cool. I'm like, oh, I like that.
So Talibah, why hip hop? I mean, it's not like you're in the music industry. It's not like you're in, a musician or a producer per se. What has drawn you to teach about hip hop?
Well, again, because I'm from South Central LA, I'm from the hood. I've always lived in the hood. I served in Newark, New Jersey, Sacramento. Well, my kids, they were middle class, bringing them up. But it's part of my language, to be honest with you. Hip hop is my language. Hip hop is my voice. Hip hop has always told the stories and opened up the eyes and encouraged others to tell their stories. But as a teacher, I engage my students. And how do I engage them? There's a pedagogy where you have to assess your students' need and where they are. You have to go where they are. And in urban areas, where my students are is with hip hop. So I use hip hop as my vehicle, my door to get in. If I could briefly tell you a story about what happened in Colombia. When I was in Colombia.
Now, just to clarify, this is Colombia, not South Carolina. This is Colombia, South America.
Not with the U, the O.
Yeah.
I actually have a T-shirt that said it's Colombia, not Colombia.
Yeah, I love that T-shirt.
Yeah. So when I was in Colombia, I was working for the United States State Department, connected to the embassy English language program. And so I'm the embassy woman that went to the Colombo Americanos in Colombia, and I was training teachers and I was meeting with students. So I'm the embassy lady.
Now, these are high schools or like primary or secondary schools?
I had secondary and university.
Got it.
Secondary and university. But in one instance, I walked into a classroom and the teachers, number one, they're shocked when I walk in. I'm the embassy lady, old lady with dreadlocks, dressed very ethnically. And like, what? Whoa, wait a minute. And like
African attire.
Yeah. Traditional, African American. I can't say African because I've been to Africa a couple of times. But it's what we have done as African Americans to adapt to capture some parts of our culture. So I'm very ethnic. And I have dreadlocks, which, in Latin America is pelo malo. Like, why would she do that? She's a professional. But I walk into the classroom. Yeah, bad hair. Sorry. Bad hair. Yeah, I have to translate sometimes. So I walk into the classroom and the kids are looking at me like, oh my God. Like they expected this, this white person. People ask me if I'm an American all the time.
What Latinos think of it as an American.
Yeah. And then when I tell them, I say, oh, Beyonce is my neighbor. They go, oh my God. Well, not her, but her mom is, So I get kudos from them. So I walk into the classroom and the teachers automatically say, what are you going to do? You can't teach them English. They're not interested in English at all. We can't get them, and complain. And I'll say, okay. And I looked at and I said, okay, I've got your assessment. Thank you very much. Move to the side, please. And I asked the students, what music do you like? And what did they say? Hip hop. Popular music. And I said, okay, I'll see you tomorrow. And the teacher's like, that's it? That's her assessment? I'm like, oh yeah, I got it. I got it. So when I came back the next day, by the time the students came in, I had my laptop set up, had the projector on, and when they sat down, they're like, oh, now the students like, oh, there's a Black American talking to us. What is she gonna talk to us about? And all I did was hit play. Bing! Shine bright like a diamond. Now this isn't hip hop. Shine bright like a diamond. Rihanna's Diamonds. Mm-hmm. And their eyes popped open, and the teacher's like, oh my God, what is she doing? I had 3 pages of lyrics ready for them. They all spontaneously went into song.
Mm-hmm. They knew all the
they
words.
knew I gave them the 3 pages of lyrics, and they sang every single word.
Mm-hmm.
Without asking me, what does this mean? Without translation, it didn't matter. They sang. And then after they sang, I said, okay, guys, get up, stand up. The teachers are appalled. Like, what is she doing? I said, get up. They got up. I put on Bruno Mars, Uptown Funk, and we started dancing. I showed them the dance routine, and the teachers are like, what the heck is this? This embassy lady walks in here and just totally disrupts this very structured, very quiet, where's the book? Where's my pen? And we're up dancing. And I taught them how to the rap inside Uptown Funk, which is very easy. The rhythm, the melody, the words are very easy, and I had to explain to it. And by the time I was done with them, they were rapping. They may not have known the words. Now that's another lesson. And then I kind of felt like I walked out the classroom and I brushed off my shoulders. You know how we do in the hood? Mm-hmm. I'm like, I'm out. I'm out. And the students are like, when are you coming back? And the teachers' mouths were open, like, oh my God, what just happened? And I'm like, you might want to try this. You start with your own music. Zip, I'm out. And I've always done that. And there's actually in our training in urban education, we do anti-racism, anti-bias curriculum, culturally relevant, culturally specific curriculum. There's something I want to share with you about how we use rhythm in the classroom to engage our students in language arts. That's what we do in the hood. Now, in a middle class school, you may or may not know that, but in the hood, we connect to the culture of our students, which is the way you should.
So I guess I want to connect this back to your experience in, like, when you were in high school, but also when you were teaching high school back in Compton.
Mm-hmm.
Was this the level of energy? Like, was it normal, or was this something that you sort of learned and acquired over the years as a teacher?
For me, my level of energy?
Or no, like in the classroom, do you feel like you were taught this way, so to speak?
Yeah, definitely. I was mentored. I was groomed. As I said, Crenshaw High School was an incubator, and we had really good relationships with our teachers. And as I have mentioned, they were very experimental. We didn't have No Child Left Behind, where it was so restrictive and how you teach as it is now, what my grandsons have to go through. Right. But that freedom and creativity, we were writing poems at Crenshaw High School. We were looking at songs and analyzing. And this is the 60s. So I remember analyzing songs about the Vietnam War. I remember analyzing songs about the civil rights.
Yeah, I mean, back then, we're talking songs like Richie Havens,
Bob Dylan, and Jefferson Airplane. They're the ones that did White Rabbit about drugs. And so my English class, we were analyzing literature, but the literature was popular music. Right. I mean, I've done Shakespeare and I've done, whatever the guy's names, I don't even know. I took African American literature. And so I have the gamut. And what engaged me and the part of the community that I was in was the music that speaks to our heart and speaks to our soul. So it just I didn't really think about it because it's very much a part of who I am. People don't know how far back hip hop goes, what we now call hip hop. It goes back. I mean, the original hip hop artists is our grandfathers now, as I am. So that energy existed in the community. I heard it as I'm driving down the driving down the streets in Crenshaw Crenshaw Boulevard. I'm feeling the beat. My body is actually jumping because the community was on fire then. I've lived through 3 riots in Los Angeles, but there was always the beat, the beat, the beat, the beat,
Right.
the beat, 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 the heartbeat. It was always there. So I can't say when I had a moment. It's part of who I am.
And why do you think in a country, down in South America, far away from the Bronx, far away from LA, from Atlanta, from Chicago, these, hip hop epicenters, why would or will they connect so much with hip hop? Even though it's literally a different language, English, first of all. And on top of that, you described it as a language of itself.
Mm-hmm.
What's going on there?
I think it's about liberation. I think it's what my experience has been. One thing, let me go back. I'm always correcting people. The Americas, plural.
Mm-hmm.
And the experience of the Americas regarding racism is very similar. It may present itself differently, but it's there. Central and South America has a lot of racial thinking and racial socialization.
Mm-hmm.
These same kids are watching social media and they see kids their age who have the freedom, the First Amendment right to say ouch, the First Amendment right to shout, and the First Amendment right to create beautiful lyrical poetry, which is what hip hop is. They hear their beat because it is the beat of Africa.
Mm-hmm.
People don't recognize or haven't recognized the spiritual destiny of people of African descent.
Yeah.
Every country that has received slaves in the Americas has been influenced by African culture, whether
That's
they
right.
know it or not. So, for example, Colombia, specifically San Andres, and it's not Pacifica, what is it? The other islands, San Andres and...
Are you thinking of Providencia?
Providencia.
Mm-hmm.
It was a major slave port. But because of the mixing, and I can even talk about what is in Colombian culture, which is so evident of the culture of enslaved people, your dances, you don't take big steps, you take tiny steps.
Right.
And the tiny steps
chains.
are because of the chains on the feet. Exactly.
Yeah.
So I think there's something very primal when we hear a beat, drums, tambores, that come from Africa. Yeah. And something happens to us. When I first walked into Colombia and I first met my university students, they didn't know I was Black. They didn't know I had dreadlocks. They didn't know I dressed like I'm Black. When I walked into that room, they gasped. And it wasn't a gasp like, oh my God. It was a gasp like, oh. They
Relief.
saw themselves. It was a gasp of, it was not the death breath, but the life breath.
Right.
And they came to me and I opened up my arms and I said to them, come here. And I'm crying right now. They hugged me and started crying.
Mm.
They saw me. We have a thing in African proverb. I see you. I saw them. And I'm mama. And everyone, and the embassy people are there, and Maduka is there, Ministerio de Educación is there. And they're like, do you know them? I say, yeah, I do. I know them. But you just got here. I say, but I know them. I know them.
Mm.
And there's that spiritual connection that people of African descent, people who have been disenfranchised, people who have been marginalized, et cetera, every label, we have an ability to see. In the Baha'i faith, we call pupil of the eye. We have the ability to see beyond what is physically, tangibly present. And we see each other. And whichever country I've been into, and I've been to a lot, they see me.
Actually, can you emphasize more on that term, pupil of the eye? I love that term.
You know, I can say my transition and the transition of the Black race, we started off as enslaved. In Americas, we came from empires of kings and queens, and we were doing fine. But our name has changed. And I say to people, Baha'u'llah has changed my name. Baha'u'llah, the founder, prophet founder of the Baha'i faith, has his finger on the pulse of what we need to do to establish justice in the world. He refers to people of African descent as pupil of the eye, the black part of the eye through which the light of spirit shines forth. And that's a really bad paraphrasing. But we have in the Baha'i writings, we have a lot of references to the spiritual destiny of people of African descent. So I'm no longer Negro. I'm no longer colored. I'm not the N-word. My father said, why are you calling yourself Afro? Why do you call yourself African American? My new name, because of Baha'u'llah, which is supported by Abdul Baha, his son, and implemented by the guardian Shoghi Effendi, says and we're talking about anti-Black now. It goes back to, you are descendant of Africa. And I'm like, yeah, you talk about empowering and uplifting. Because I know I'm feeling something. I know the drums do something to me. I know your music touches me. And Baha'u'llah said it's because of our innate ability to see the spiritual world, to be spiritually connected. We are the black part of the eye, which is surrounded by the white, which the white needs to be in a supportive role. So when I meet students, I tell them about their nobility, because Baha'u'llah says that we are created noble. Wherefore dost thou abase thyself? Colombia is dealing with some major issues. Genocide. And for them to see hope, to see a Black woman working for the embassy, very articulate, but I could switch into slang at a heartbeat. I'm down. I'm earthy. I'm with them. It's my spirit that is what they're attracted to. It's not my degrees. It's not where I've been. Well, maybe because it has influenced my ability to connect to people.
But they feel the love.
It's the love and the light. They see the light. They see the light. And they feel the love, the genuineness, the sincerity, because Baha'u'llah says it is through our sincerity, the genuineness, that we will connect to people intimately. And I hope that I'm embodying that. So when I walk into a room, I don't walk into the room, Talibah Sun, Masters of Education, da, 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 and Urban Education, and Columbia University, Teachers College, doctoral candidate. I don't walk into the room like that. I'm like, hey, what's up? I see you. Baha'u'llah did that, because when I went to Idaho, that's another story.
You were surrounded by the white.
I had to become a Baha'i, okay? Or else, I always say, you can cut this out if you want. I became a Baha'i. I know Abdul Baha purposely spoke to me, and forgive me for being irreligious. He said, fool, wake up. He said, because if you don't become a Baha'i, either you or somebody else is going to die. Forgive me, Abdul Baha, but that's what I got.
Wow.
I was part of the Black Panther Party. I was the vice president of the Black Student Union. But many people, my generation, were looking for social justice and we didn't know where to look, as we are now. Young people looking for social justice and we don't know where. So we can only go where what is available to us. And that's very politicized, is very propagandized, is very divisive. Because I'm a Baha'i, I don't go there. I'm like, baby, let me tell you something else. Let me show you something else.
Talibah, if we're talking social justice, why would hip hop come into play? Some people might say hip hop. I mean, that's just, it's a music genre. It's just, it's for dancing. It's for rapping. It's frivolous. It's whatever, they might describe it as. Why can it be a catalyst for social justice?
Well, most of the people who criticize hip hop, as my sons used to tell me, can't get past some of the gritty language. But if you were to, go online and look at the lyrics, that would answer your question. As I said before, hip hop is the language of the streets. Everything that has happened in the African American community is in a hip hop song. Every single event is in a hip hop song. It is our voice. We are lucky as African Americans that we have First Amendment rights and we can say, ouch. And also, I want to go back a little bit to history. Black people have always spoken in code. We have always hidden our language from the masters. We still do it to this day. So if you can look at hip hop as a coding of our experience, if you can look at it like looking back at the Negro spirituals, where we were actually singing to each other and telling them the directions of how to get across the river. Swing low, sweet chariot, coming for to carry you home. Hip hop continues that culture. There's a lot of coded messages in hip hop. I play Jay-Z. My students want to sing the song, what's the word? Empire State of Mind by Alicia Keys. And then I show them Jay-Z and they can't understand. And I said, babe, it's okay. You can't understand it. You don't have a cultural reference. So those who criticize hip hop don't have a cultural reference, number one, and can't get past the gritty language, which my sons taught me to get past. And they said, Mom, but you really have to listen. And as a teacher, I teach hip hop not only as a social justice movement, but when I'm teaching literature, it is lyrical poetry. There's so much figurative language. There is curriculum about lyrical poetry. Hip hop is one of the best examples of that. So people get put off by the language, the beat, and yes, some of it is raunchy and some of it is misogynist, but that's even changing if you notice, because now there's more women who are part of hip hop and they're telling their story. And so this whole misogyny and referring to women as less than, if you notice, hip hop itself is evolving to the point that now we have hip hop artists that are getting international recognition, like the Pulitzer Prize.
Yeah,
people were shocked that Kendrick Lamar got the Pulitzer Prize for literature.
Right.
And they're like, but how could hip hop, because it's so raunchy, go past that layer? Because our language is raunchy, because we're angry. And this is the way, this is the voice. And so we can have this conversation with each other. You're an outsider looking in, but I welcome you to come in and take a look. Let's look at the lyrics, which is what I do with my students. I teach lyrical poetry. and I give them a choice. But I also introduce to them all the characteristics of lyrical poetry, like metaphors and similes and alliterations and hyperbole and paradox and symbolism and, imagery. Hip hop is full of imagery. And also hip hop asks a lot of questions. That's a characteristic of lyrical poetry, to ask a question, rhetorical questioning.
So let's look at some lyrics, Talibah. How about that?
Yeah. Which one do you want to go to?
Where do you want to start?
Well,
should we look at Kendrick since you mentioned Kendrick?
Yeah, let's go back. Let's go to Kendrick Lamar.
Which song?
Well, All Right.
Yeah.
All Right has become the model of the Black Lives Matter. And when I'm going to mess up her name, Nyong'o won a Grammy Award. She's a very beautiful Black woman from the continent. She's African national. And she said, for Black Panther, for the movie Black Panther, because his songs are the backdrop to the movie Black Panther, which has been a very empowering, uplifting movie all over the world. But everyone says two things that come out of Kendrick Lamar's lyrics on All Right, but people don't understand. We gonna be all right. We gonna be all right. And then he also refers to Maya Angelou. All my life, I've had to fight. And he illustrates that and he talks about it in his lyrics. And he tells the story. Only some of us get it. And that's okay because it is coded.
Right.
But obviously someone broke the code to the point where he was awarded a Pulitzer Prize. And we're like, fist up. It's about time somebody listened to us and listened to our voice. And it is raunchy and it is hard but the streets is raunchy. The streets are hard.
Right.
So Kendrick Lamar, Tupac, Childish Gambino, now Little Baby. I mean, if you can look past, I think one of the things too that people can't distinguish between is commercialized hip hop and social justice hip hop.
Actually, yeah, let's go back to All Right a little bit more, because one thing that I find fascinating is, the hook. We gonna be all right. It's optimistic.
Yes.
It's hopeful.
Yes.
So you mentioned there's anger in the Black community for, generations of oppression, but this is if for the hook to be hopeful, that says a lot. And for it to become this anthem, particularly for the Black Lives Matter movement,
right.
Even though, there have been different songs that have been sort of anthems, but this has been one of them.
Yeah.
What do you make of that? Why is that significant for this song, which has a hopeful connotation
because
to be the anthem?
It's exactly what you're saying. There's optimism. Again, as members of Pupil of the Eye, we may give up hope, or it may look like we're giving up hope emotionally, but I do believe there's something innate spiritually, because we are connected spiritually, that no matter what religion you belong to, you do believe that there is quote unquote deliverance, that somehow we're going to come out of this. And with all the teachings that we get as kids, that coming out will include religion, but also it may be including other ways or other venues. There's a lot polythery of what we refer to as constructive resilience. So you look at authors such as Kendrick Lamar, who are actually teaching us constructive resilience. Now, I have to say, though, that there is some tribalism within hip hop. Kendrick Lamar is from Compton. Drake doesn't get the same respect because Drake is from Canada. I'm sorry, I just got to, put out the dirty laundry here. Kendrick Lamar is from Compton, close to the LBC, next to Snoop Dogg, who is one of our elders, who is now a grandfather. So there's respect for him as an artist, that he gets to tell our story with authenticity. He is authentic, and he and many, many artists that you don't know quote our elders in their songs all the time. People that you may or may not know, like Maya Angelou. All my life, I've had to fight. There's a lot of poetry within our culture that is included in hip hop. Jay-Z is a wordsmith. My goodness. He uses so many historical references of what has happened in the hood. Little Baby now is calling out the names of those who have died recently. So we have a historical continuum of Black people voicing their anguish from the day we landed, 1619, in the Americas to now. We have never been silent. It's been coded. You may not know it. And so people like Kendrick Lamar and Tupac Shakur, and, it goes way back. This is a way of telling our history. Some of it is in your face. Some of it's not. Some of it is very political, like Public Enemy, fight the power that be. I mean, when I was in college, we were bopping to that. Let's see, 1889. No, I was out of college then. Okay, my kids were bopping to that, and I was bopping next to them. Fight the power. Fight the power that be. Fight the power. Fight the power that be. These are messages that gives us hope and optimism. We're like, yep, I can do that. So there's all the, in Spanish, they say, si se puede. It's our slogan. Yes, we can.
Let's look at Fight the Power.
Okay.
I mean, this has obviously been a landmark song in hip hop. Can you describe to me sort of like the setting, like as to why you think this song came out during that time, when it did, and what it said?
Okay, so Public Enemy was very popular in the late 80s. And during the 80s, I think hip hop was at one of its peaks. It's at a different peak. And they were very upfront, without apologies, about what was happening. And I think it was the movie Do the Right Thing, the Spike Lee, where their song, Fight the Power That Be, was the soundtrack for that. But during the time, so if it's important to know who these people are. Public Enemy was also very much influenced by the Nation of Islam. People consider the Nation of Islam a militarized religion. But the Nation of Islam was very instrumental in pulling up the quote unquote ghetto, the urban areas. And there was a baritone. If you think of Malcolm X and his speeches.
It's not so good to refer to what you're going to do as a sit-in. That right there castrates you. Right there it brings you down. What goes with it? Think of the image of someone sitting. An old woman can sit. An old man can sit. A chump can sit. A coward can sit. Anything can sit. Well, you and I have been sitting long enough, and it's time today for us to start doing some standing and some fighting to back that up.
Compared to Dr. Martin Luther King.
One day right now in Alabama, little black boys and black girls will be able to join hands with little white boys and white girls as sisters and brothers. I have a dream today.
You could say that Public Enemy was very much influenced by the intonations of Malcolm X.
Yeah.
Very authoritative, very baritone, very aggressive, very in your face. We're not taking it was, again, it was influenced by what was happening at that time. And Malcolm X had already been killed, but his image, his iconic speeches are still very much part of the African American vernacular. And Public Enemy was able to touch into that, not only with their lyrics, but with the rhythm and the way they dressed and the way they were so unapologetic. Very political, yes, but they weren't attacking political figures. They were attacking a system. And fight the power, the words fight the power, we have the ability not to succumb to the structural racism, the anti-Black sentiments. We have the power to do that. And that's why Fight the Power is still an anthem. And I'm sure somewhere during these protests, they are saying, fight the power, fight the power that be. So they were brought up, Public Enemy were brought up in the 60s. So that's what I'm saying. It goes back to my generation. They're brought up in the 60s and influenced by the civil rights movement. They're influenced by the bus boycott, by the assassination of our leaders. And there's a movie, I think it's called Network, where it was popular, I'm mad as hell and I'm not taking it anymore. And that's what Public Enemy, it showed our anger. It's like, we're mad as hell and we're not taking it anymore. And if you look at their video with Fight the Power, they have massive people congregating saying fight the power, which is very scary to people who are not part of this culture. Oh my God, we're getting ready to revolt. Yeah, just like Nick Turner did back in the days of the slave revolt, or just like Haiti did. You know, that's why that fear is there, because there's always a fear of Black people congregating. We congregate around our issues. We congregate around our music. And there's also the African tradition, which Public Enemy and many hip hop artists use, called call and response. So you have someone who calls out a frame and everyone responds. So Fight the Power is one of those African traditions that we don't, sometimes we don't even know we're doing it, of call and response. Fight the power. And then everybody will say, fight the power that be. Fight the power. And then everyone, fight the power that be. That's very African.
Yep.
And you also see that in Black churches, the call and response. So it's something that we connect to.
Well, it goes back to the Negro spirituals too.
Yes.
You know, somebody would start a song and, working in the fields, and somebody else, everybody else responds.
Well, it's Long John, Long John, he's long gone, long gone, he's long gone, he's long gone, he's long gone, long gone. Well, if I had listened, what the roses say, I could been at home, then the roses say,
it's part of who we are, and we don't even have to discuss it. There's a lot that's missing in our history as far as in the school's structural history. But a lot of our history that we know is oral history. We know about the struggles of our parents. We know about the struggle of our grandparents. I'm living close to right now my family sharecropping land. I'm in Alabama right now. And I am hours away from where my mother lived. My aunt, who is almost 100 years old right now. I have a 102-year-old aunt here. They're sitting on sharecropper land. It's still here. We still have evidences. But for young people, they may not know the specifics about on what date, at what time did so-and-so do this, and they knew something was beyond Harriet Tubman. Rap has actually been the teacher and the educator.
I'm looking here at the lyrics of Fight the Power. And if you look at the lyrics, there's this one part that I feel is very strong. It says, most of my heroes don't appear on no stamps. Sample a look back, you look and find nothing but rednecks for 400 years if you check. Don't worry, be happy was a #1 jam. Damn, if I say it, you can slap me right here. Let's get this party started right. And so like it's so interesting the fact that they mention, and before that they're talking about like John Wayne and Elvis, how, they're like heroes or like these icons in the white community, but not to them. No, not to this group. Is like, they don't mean anything to me because we haven't seen our faces as an iconic figure before, right? And then they're melting like that with like, let's just let's get this party started. So you have this kind of a contrast too.
Well, because, we go back to talking about history. The history of conquistadors, colonizers, have been shoved down our throat. We don't, in the traditional setting, we don't know our history. As far as a history book, it's not there. So these icons, as you said, have been lifted up to a certain, level of admiration. But they're not our icons, and we know better. See, that's the thing that people don't understand. We know better. And if you listen to hip hop and you listen to the lyrics as you did, you go, whoa, what do they mean? I don't understand. Because it's coded language, it's figurative language. But we understand without even discussing it, because our grandparents already told us. So when you say Elvis Presley to me right now, I just got, ooh, because the first time I experienced Jim Crow was when I went to go see an Elvis Presley movie hours from where I am now in Athens, Alabama, where I had to sit in the crow's nest. And from this day, I despise Elvis Presley. And so, yes, these images have been forced down our throats. But if we were raised right, that's how we say it. If we were raised right, we know better. And so Public Enemy takes that and says, and to be honest with you, this other thing that people don't understand, hip hop has an audience. As far as the lyrics are concerned. Now, they'll make their money on the rhythm.
Right.
You can play it at a dance party. And thank you very much for putting the money in my pocket. But those who are dancing to it, who are not of African descent or who don't live in the urban, they don't know what he's saying, nor do they care. So right now with the Black Lives Matter, there's been some criticism about Black people dancing in the streets. Why are they dancing? Why are they so happy? Well, you sound like you're talking about the Minstrels during, what was it, vaudeville days, which Childish Gambino shows in his video. What you're seeing is not the blackface. What you're seeing is our spirit. What you're seeing is our connection to our rhythm. What you're hearing are us shouting our voices. And Public Enemy shouted. They weren't soft. Not Alicia Keys. I love her. But hip hop is not that. That's proof of the impact and the influence and the release, like therapy, that hip hop has offered for the Black community.
What do you think, Talibah? Since you brought up Minstrels, like the Minstrel show, I think it's very important to look at that historical context, because you see how, in a sense, the minstrel shows was sort of like the birth of like pop, like popular music, because before that, Americans were playing, basically like European music, and then whites started painting their face black to try to depict their perspective of the Black culture to entertain other white people. And then other Black artists, entertainers saw it as like the only way to kind of come into entertainment to sort of depict themselves. But then you see things like the banjo, originally being African, and then it sort of crept its way into the white community, and then all of a sudden it's adopted as like this like white folk, bluegrass instrument. Is I from my perspective, I see something similar happening with hip hop, where it's this language of the African American community. And it's very interesting that you say like the lyrics are for its own community. The rhythm is what everybody else understands and catches onto, and therefore it's reached the masses. And now everybody's using hip hop. I mean, you can't turn on the radio without hearing influences of hip hop.
Right.
The kicks, the snares, the bass. What do you make of this? Like, You know, like, I mean, I know it's complex, but what are some of your thoughts and feelings regarding this sort of, you know, I guess, I don't know if cultural borrowing, stealing, whatever you want to call it?
I have to go back to my first identity is I'm a Baha'i. And Baha'u'llah has spoken of African people and African culture with much admiration. And he and Abdul Baha and Shoghi Effendi says that we, people of African descent, have much to contribute to the world. We have much to contribute now to going towards race unity. This may not be politically correct to say this, but I know that people of European descent see us. I know they see us. They're afraid of what they see.
Right.
And I don't want to go into that, much about that, but when you're talking about the blackface and the stealing of our culture, the cultural appropriation, that goes before the minstrels. That goes back to slavery. As you said, the fiddle, the drumming. Our Negro spirituals were stolen. Go to a white Baptist church in the South. You wouldn't know the difference. If you close your eyes, you wouldn't know if they were black and white. Let's look at Amazing Grace that everybody sings, but have no clue what that song's about. So we feel things on a visceral level. People see us as people of African descent feeling things on a visceral level. It's very spiritual. It's very spiritual. If it wasn't, this world would be in a whole different, we would be having a different conversation. But because we're spiritual and because we have hope and because we are connected to the spiritual realm, because we can see spiritual realities, others know that we do. They can't name it. They can't touch it. So they try to destroy it. Because how could we be such spiritual beings when we're not even human? Really? Why were we? This is a question that many of us in the African community have. In both, and I mean the continent, I mean the Caribbean, whatever. Why were we hunted, captured, and enslaved? Why? That's a whole nother podcast.
Right.
So there's also, I think, a feeling of guilt and shame for the atrocities that's been done to Black people all over the world. And so to make light of it is to laugh. Let's put on blackface and make a comedy show. Racism affects everyone. It's not just anti-Black. It's a disease that affects us all. So the fact that you are okay with putting on blackface, and you know about the cartoon that you had there in Colombia, by putting on the blackface and making light of and using icons, with exaggerated features, these caricatures, I think is a way from masking the atrocities that we suffered. You have to make us less than human, don't you, to justify treating us as if we're less than human. That's my own opinion.
Do you think when the Black community, and in this particular context, we're talking about music, when it has such an impact, let's say with hip hop in this particular case, and it influences literally every corner of the world, is I mean, I guess you can speak from your personal perspective, or if you have a more general perspective, that's fine as well. But do you think there's a sense of pride of like, great that we can influence so many people that like our voice is being heard? Or is there also that sense of like, part of our culture is being taken and maybe even being misused?
That's a complicated question. Let me say that the Black community is pretty insular, so we really don't care what other people think because we're not doing it for other people. I mean, commercially, yes. Commercially, yes. But that's not the audience, and we know that. We know it's our story. I can tell you what the response of my students had, that I had adults. I was teaching adults at a language center, and we were looking at the global influence of hip hop. And I had students in there from so many different countries. And we use This Is America.
Childish Gambino.
Childish Gambino. This Is America. I taught them what a social commentary is. Now, they had to take that title, This Is America, and they had to take out the word America and put their country. Whoa. But before we did that, we Googled and we found this is Nigeria, this is Turkey, this is Syria, this is... I didn't know that. I was like, oh my goodness. They took that refrain, this is, and they put their country, and they did the same imagery, but it was relevant to their country. I can tell you what's happening now with the Black Lives Movement and the protests against the killing of George Floyd and everyone who went before and everyone who is going now. We just had one last week of chokehold. We're happy that people are getting it, that they're becoming aware of what we've already known. But we also don't feel a responsibility to tell you the story, because we've been telling the story for 400 years now and you haven't listened.
Yeah.
That's what makes us insulary. And we'll check you out and see, are you an advocate? Are you down with me? I saw a very, very powerful image during one of the protests. It wasn't in the States, where there was a Black Lives Matter protest, and the white people in that country, people of European descent, stood in front of to protect the Black protesters behind them. And the police did not raise a baton, did not raise a rifle, did not throw a tear gas pellet. That's what we care about.
Yeah.
Are you going to stand with us? And as we say in the Black church, are you willing to bear witness? Which is what the Baha'i faith teaches, that each one of us, people of European descent and people of African descent, in addressing racism in the Americas, have specific responsibilities. And it is that spiritual solution where we are treating each other as human beings, seeing ourselves in the image of God, recognizing our slow healing grievous wounds and our lack of warmth towards you unless you display sincere and genuine friendship. Other than that, to be honest with you, Daniel, we don't care. We have never seen people of European descent. I mean, there's been obviously examples like the Quakers are the ones that, were the major abolitionists, and it was, the Jewish who actually started the NAACP. But we say in the Baha'i faith, by their deeds you shall know them. And so that's what we as a Black community right now, and we're still disappointed. We don't see the deeds. We don't see the support. We don't even see the willingness to understand. Don't narrate. Don't give me my narration. This is my personal narration. How you reflect to it, that belongs to you, but it's not me. Don't tell me what my story is. Don't tell me what I need to hear. You are not in the position to do that. The only white person who can do that is Eminem. We trust him. But nobody else, not even Drake. We don't trust him. Sorry. I'm glad you're making money, boo. But you're not telling our story.
That's great. Talibah, you've mentioned Lil Baby, and that his latest song, The Bigger Picture, has become this sort of new anthem for the Black Lives Matter movement. So let's jump to the present. Okay, what can you tell me about this song, and why do you think it means so much right now?
Many people, again, don't take time to read the lyrics. But if you look at this song, he is telling the story of now. Been going on for too long to get even. Throw us in cages like dogs and hyenas. He's talking about the prison system, the 13th Amendment. I went to court and they sent me to prison. My mama was crushed when they said I can't leave. I mean, he got a life sentence plus. We just some products of our environment. You can't fight the fire with fire. I mean, he just goes on and have you ever been to a slam poetry session where they just go on and everybody's like finger snap. And but to be honest with you, outside of our community, very few people know what hip hop is and what it does and how it has been the voice of the people. How it's been our therapy, how it's been our news. We don't watch Fox News. We listen to Little Baby. Think about everything that's going on. I boost security up in my home. I'm with my kind. I'm with my kind if they right or wrong. I'm going to say it again. I'm with my kind if they right or wrong. He's in his community with his people. Whether they right or wrong, because now they want to color us as being criminals and drug addicts and black on black crime. Whether we right or wrong, that's my community, that's my family, that's my hood. You don't get to come up in here. And this is a result of what we've had to live under for 400 years. I see blue lights, I get scared or start running. That could be crazy. They supposed to protect us, throw us in handcuffs and arrest us. While they go home at night, that's messed up. Knowing we needed help, they neglect us. Wonder who's gonna make them respect us. I could see in your eyes that you fed up. They know we a problem together. They know that we can storm any weather. I'm gonna say it again. They know that we a problem together. They know that we can storm any weather. Look what we've gone through for 400 years. And still we rise, as Maya Angelou said. And still we rise. And thank God I'm a Baha'i. Because I belong to a religion that says, you are the pupil of God. You can see. You can see. Now the task is now, how do we bring everybody to the table like Abdul Baha did during his visit to the United States? How you bring everybody to the table and literally sit them down and say, okay, we need to work on this. So that's where we are now. What is our action plan? You don't have to like hip hop. We don't care. But we do. It's our story. It's the one thing you cannot take from us. You can try. Many people try. Vanilla Ice. I'm sorry, I'm old school. Oh my God. But it will never be as authentic nor respected as the hip hop that we know that is teaching us constructive resilience. And that is social justice movement. I don't know what else to call it.
Yeah. Yeah, Talibah, that's really powerful. And you know, when you say like, you know, you can't take it from us even though you try, even if you try. I think unfortunately, you know, when you mentioned about for commercial purposes, like a lot of these record labels, for example, are made up of mainly white men who quote unquote have the final say. Thankfully, there is a rise in independent artists who are able to just put out music on their own and not have to go through any filters. So I think that's, and also the ease of technology to just be able to record anywhere. That has definitely been a great tool for the rap community to just record in bedrooms, in basements, and put out their music
underground.
Yeah, exactly. And I think, you know, just a lot of these like record labels have sort of simplified the message of hip hop and sort of, you know, again, have been like forcefully perhaps shaping what it should look like. But I think, like you said, undoubtedly that's sort of like that attempt of trying to manipulate it, and in the end, even though we'll get to the surface some songs that are manipulated, so to speak, to meet somebody's agenda, in the end it's like that sincerity, like it just, you can't rip this root out. Talibah, all this being said, like, what do you think, or what is your hope for what's to come? Do you have, we've been looking a lot at the historical context, and we've been looking at the present, and even you said, like, I that like the voices, or in general, like, what is your vision or your hope for the way hip hop and music from the Black community can grow and continue to influence?
My hope is with young people, not with the old heads. I have 3. And actually, it's my kids who got me into hip hop. I mean, to the level where I am now. They said, Mom, listen to the lyrics. I have hope when you're talking about the production of music and hip hop. I would like to do some research and see how many artists have taken control of their own art and own their own studio.
Yeah.
I could say in the early days of hip hop, it was controlled by white producers.
Right.
They had the money, they had the means. But Jay-Z and Beyonce are billionaires now.
Yep.
A lot of money is being put back into the community. Kids are going to school because a hip hop artist forgave their student loans. Historical Black colleges are now on the uptick because, as in our words, we woke. So I have hope from a spiritual point of view and from a material point of view. Number one, spiritually. In the Baha'i faith, we know we're going to get over this if we get involved in creating these race relationships, if we get involved with being aware of our own conditioning and socialization, if we are part of action plans where we go into the community and for whatever, and I don't mean an outside looking in kind of thing, but being part of, like each one of us has a responsibility. I think it comes from each one of us understanding what our responsibilities are. And for us as Baha'is, that is clearly written many times in many ways. And I have hope because I belong to a religion, a faith-based lifestyle that requires that I bring myself to account each day ere thou art summoned to a reckoning. We don't have preachers. We don't have clergy. The responsibility is up to us. And I think my hope is it's up to us human beings to rid ourselves of this disease of racism. First of all, call it out. Pop the pimple, let it ooze out what it's doing now. But before we start talking about solutions, we must, number one, not participate in political partisanship because that is only divisive. But most importantly, to see each one of us as members of one human family. And I know my kids don't have the issues that I do. And my kids will tell me, Mom, that's your baggage, that's your trauma, that's your generational trauma. But you raised me as a Baha'i. And I'm like, thank God. And so I think for me, it's in my classroom. That's where my hope is. I am looking around what's happening, but I know where my arena is. And my arena is my classroom. In the Americas. I can't tell anybody else what they should do. The Baha'i faith has given us a lot of information and a lot of direction, but we also have personal initiative. I can only have hope on what I'm doing, what I've done, and what I'm doing. And I'm hopeful that there are the other like-minded people, members of the Syrian Lines of Soldiers, like-minded organizations that can go beyond political speech and really strap up our boots. We're in this for a reason. Everyone has taken note. I hope. I can't say everybody, but I know a lot of people are. And I know because we're locked in our house, we're being creative, we're reaching out, we're not so busy running around trying to take care of material needs because we can't. So we're having to redefine who and what we are and what is our purpose on this life. I can't tell other people what they should and should not do. I can only be affirmed in what I'm doing, directed by the fact that my number one identity is I'm a Baha'i. And I'm down with that.
Talibah, thank you so much. Is there anything else you would like to share before we wrap up?
I really appreciate you. I really appreciate having this opportunity to voice my connection as a 66-year-old woman, giving me the respect that I too have a voice, that I too can participate in this discussion, these elevated social discourses. I appreciate you giving me this opportunity. Thank you so much.
No, it's my pleasure. I want to thank you really for coming and sharing your heart and your thoughts and your experience. Really beautiful. Thank you so much, Talibah. I also have a lot of hope for what's to come. If people want to reach out to you or somehow connect with you, what would be the best way?
Facebook. Because I can control Facebook. I can delete you if I don't like you. If you're not coming from a good place, if you want to troll me, I can delete you. So I think Facebook, Talibah Sun, TALIBAHSUN. And I have a couple of pages on there that address some issues. But yeah, well, that would be the best place.
Talibah, thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. Te quiero, mi amor. I miss you.
Likewise. Thank you so much for listening. And if you know somebody who would also enjoy this episode, please feel free to send them that link. And it would also be a great help if you give this podcast a rating and a review on Apple Podcasts or also whatever other podcast platform you're using. You've been listening to One Planet Music, and I'm your host, Daniel Rinaldi. Until next time.